Hey everybody, how are you? It's me, ASMR Classic One again, with another whispered, page-turning reading, which I hope you'll find relatively relaxing. Thanks for the comments from the last video as well. I quite like the idea of being old school. As I think I mentioned before, I discovered ASMR when I was recovering from COVID, and I tend to use it every night now to drift off. So that's kind of where I'm from, and as you may know, if you've been here before, we're actually trying to get this channel monetized so we can do some original writing with an ASMR focus, if that makes sense. So if you haven't subscribed yet, then perhaps you could press the little thingy poppy down here. It'd be great if you could subscribe. It'd be lovely. Help us out an awful lot. I mentioned the excuse me. We looked at the London Review of Books last time, and I'm going to go back there. Let's move this out of the way. This book that we were looking at before, which I came across, Writers at Work, and it's quite fascinating way the Paris Review interviews. So I thought I'd probably carry on a little bit with this time. It will be of interest if you're a writer, or of course if you're a reader. And it talks a little bit about, from the interviews that they did, how writers create effectively. So let's have a look, shall we? My new bookmark, by the way, is the old receipt I found in another book. I showed this in a short, I think. World of Books. Sorry, I should turn my email off. World of Books, Golden Square, London. I must check and see if they're still there. And this was a book from receipt from Yorkshire, somebody in Yorkshire. And as you can see, the Years of Peril is called the book, and it cost 5 shillings to buy. I think Britain went digital in about in the early 70s, I think, so this was quite a long time ago. It also has London W1, which is before we had postcodes, or the supercodes, I think they call them in America. And this is, so this is obviously quite an old receipt. It was 6p dispatch as well, 6p postage. I do wonder if it was ever paid. But anyway. Change of address form on the back. Introduction form. Please write in block capitals. Yeah. A little slice of history almost, isn't it? And for now, it's my bookmark. So we'll go back to this. I think we got to sort of somewhere down here talking about short story writers. So I might carry on, because I can relate to this as well, because I aspire to write, and in fact I do. I've written a few plays. About to write a book, a guidebook for literary pubs in London, but you know, always. I'll perhaps let you know when it happens. So, apparently the hardest problem for almost any writer, whatever his medium, is getting to work in the morning or in the afternoon if he is a late riser, like Styron, or even at night. Thornton Wilder says, many writers have told me that they have built up mnemonic devices to start them off on each day's writing task. Hemingway once told me he sharpened 20 pencils. Willa Cather said that she read a passage from the Bible, not from piety, she was quick to add, but to get in touch with fine prose. She also regretted that she had formed this habit, for the prose rhythms of 1611 were not those she was in search of. My springboard has always been long walks. Those long walks alone are a fairly common device. They are, aren't they? Yes. Thomas Wolfe would sometimes roam through the streets of Brooklyn all night. Reading the Bible before writing is a much less common practice, and in spite of Miss Cather's disclaimer, I suspect that it did involve a touch of piety. Dependent for success on forces partly beyond his control, an author may try to appropriate the unknown powers. I knew one novelist, an agnostic, who said he would often get down on his knees and started the working day with a prayer. Interesting stuff, especially if you are a writer. Don't feel so guilty. I tend to start more, lunchtime. Anyway, let's read on. The usual working day is 3 or 4 hours. Whether these authors write with pencils or with a pen or a typewriter, and some do all three in the course of completing a manuscript, an important point seems to be that they all work with their hands. The only exception is Thurber in his 60s. I've often heard it said by psychiatrists that writers belong to the oral type. The truth seems to be, the truth seems to be that most of them are manual types. Words are not merely sounds for them, but magical designs that their hands make on paper. I always think of writing as a physical thing. Nelson Algren says, I am an artisan, Simeon explains. I need to work with my hands. I would like to carve my novel in a piece of wood. Hemingway used to have the feeling that his fingers did much of his thinking for him. Hemingway, God bless him. After an automobile accident in Montana, where the doctors said he might lose the use of his right arm, he was afraid he would have to stop writing. Thurber used to have the same sense of thinking with his fingers on the keyboard of the typewriter. That's me pretending to be a typewriter. Yeah, okay. When they were working together on their play, The Male Animal, Elliot Nugent used to say to him, well, Thurber, we've got our problem. We've got all these people in the living room. What are we going to do with them? Thurber would answer that he didn't know and couldn't tell him until he'd sat down at the typewriter and found out. After his vision became too weak for the typewriter, he wrote very little for a number of years, using black crayon on yellow paper, about 20 scrawled words to the page. Then painfully he taught himself to compose stories in his head and dictate them to a stenographer. Dictation for most authors is a craft which, if acquired at all, is learned rather late in life, and I think with a sense of jumping over one step in the process of composition. Interesting, isn't it? I find it interesting. I hope you do too, of course. Or at least relaxing. Instead of giving... Instead of giving dictation... Try and get the book straight. Instead of giving dictation, many writers seem to themselves to be taking it. I listen to the voices, Faulkner once said to me, and when I've put down what voices say, it's right. I don't always like what they say, but I don't try to change it. Morik says, during a creative period I write every day. A novel should not be interrupted. When I cease to be carried along, when I no longer feel as though I were taking down distraction or dictation, I stop. Listening as they do to an inner voice that speaks, or falls silent as if by caprice. Many writers, from the beginning, have personified the voice as a benign or evil spirit. For Hawthorne, it was evil, or at least frightening. The devil himself always seems to get into my inkstand, he said in a letter to his publisher, and I can only exercise him by pens full at a time. For Kipling, the demon that lived in his pen was tyrannical, but well-meaning. When your demon is in charge, he said, do not try to think consciously. Drift, wait, and obey. Objects on the writing table, which is the altar of the demon, are sometimes chosen with the same religious care, as if they were chalices and patterns. Kipling said, for my ink, I demanded the blackest, and I have been in my father's house, as once I would have kept an ink boy to grind me Indian ink. All blue-black inks were not abomination to my demon. My writing blocks were built for me, to an unchanged pattern of large off-white blue sheets, of which I was most wasteful. I might leave it there because to talk of demons, I'm also aware of the time. But I do hope you find that at least relaxing, if not interesting, as a writer or a reader. And I might come back to this again later on. Well, I will definitely come back to this again later on. But thank you for your time. As I mentioned, if you're not a subscriber, it would be a great help if you could press the little button down here. Oh, you know it better than I do, don't you? Thank you very much for your time, as I say. I hope you found that relaxing at least. And I'll see you next time, hopefully. And as always, to quote Charles Dickens, bless us all, everyone. Thanks.